Hi, this is Alex from devstories.eu. OpenAI Agents SDK, Episode 15 of 18. Giving a language model direct access to your local file system sounds like an absolute security nightmare. But if you strictly sandbox that access through a standardized protocol, it becomes a safe and powerful way to process local data. Today, we are looking at connecting local MCP servers via Stdio and HTTP. The Model Context Protocol defines how your agents talk to external tools and data sources. When you want to run these servers inside your own infrastructure, the OpenAI Agents SDK provides two local transport methods. The first is standard input and output, using the class called MCPServerStdio. People sometimes think this requires a complex local networking setup. It does not. When you use the Stdio transport, the SDK simply spawns the MCP server as a local child process. The agent sends requests by writing to the standard input of that process and reads responses from its standard output. Consider a scenario where you want your agent to read files, but only from one specific local directory. You instantiate MCPServerStdio and pass it the command to run. For example, you might pass the Node Package Manager command npx, followed by the arguments to launch the official MCP file system server and the absolute path to your target directory. Because this server runs as a subprocess, you must manage its lifecycle. If your Python script finishes or crashes, you do not want an orphaned node process lingering in the background. The SDK enforces clean lifecycle management by requiring an asynchronous context manager. You define an async with block to initialize the Stdio server. When execution enters the block, the SDK spins up the child process. When execution exits the block, it cleanly tears the process down. Inside that block, you connect the running server to your agent. You create an MCP client, pass it your Stdio server instance, and then provide that client to your agent. The agent now has scoped temporary access to your local directory. Now, what if you want to expose a private internal API or connect to a service that is already running? You do not want to spawn a new subprocess for that. This brings us to the second transport option, which is MCPServerStdio HTTP. Instead of passing an executable command, you provide this class with the URL of your existing service. This is perfect for securely connecting your agent to an internal microservice running on localhost. The agent communicates by streaming data over HTTP. Here's the key insight. The agent itself has no idea which transport you chose. The connection code inside your application looks exactly the same. You still use a context manager, you still create an MCP client, and you still hand it to the agent. The SDK abstracts the transport layer completely. The single most useful takeaway here is that you can develop a custom tool as a local Stdio script for testing and later deploy it as a standalone HTTP service in production without changing a single line of your agent logic. That's all for this one. Thanks for listening and keep building.